Now for this project, we're going to go ahead and replace this switch. It's actually defective. It turns on the under cabinet lighting, but it doesn't work all the time. You can see the problem with this. So we're going to go ahead and replace the switch, get a new one in there so that way we can actually use the under cabinet lighting. But before we do that, we want to make sure that there's no power going to this outlet or to the switch. And to do that, we need to shut off the breaker downstairs. Once we shut off the breaker downstairs, we still need to double check and make sure that there isn't any power. And we do that by using a live circuit tester. So this is what that looks like. All it is a simple tool. It has a couple AA or AAA batteries in it. And we just have to turn it on. It'll beep a couple times. And then we'll double check it. We'll run this over the wires that are going to the switch and make sure there isn't any power going through it. So that way we're sure that it's safe to disconnect the switch. Now, if there was power going through it, let me show you what happens. So I'm gonna put this at this outlet here, and it beeps and flashes to let us know that that's actually a live circuit. So it's just a really good way to sanity check and make sure that the power is off to whatever that you're working on. If it's a switch or a receptacle or a light or whatever it is, this is a really good thing to have. Also make sure when you're testing, if you're replacing an outlet, for example, or a receptacle, make sure that you test the hot side. So for example, like this is the hot side here, the small one, and it sets it off. But if you put it in the neutral, it won't do anything. So always double check, make sure you're testing it. Probably it's a good idea to test both sides, both sets of wires, just in case whenever this got installed, it wasn't reversed wires, because sometimes that happens too, but it should be the small end. And once you check it, you'll know whether or not there's power going through it or if you need to flip another breaker. Okay, so first we need to take this cover off. Now that the cover's off, we need to check the power again. So let's go ahead and test this. We're just going to run this along the sides here of this switch. And it looks like everything's off because this is not going off again. To make sure that this is actually working, let's go ahead and test it on our outlet. And you can see the outlet's still working, but this switch, the place that we're actually going to be working with is fine. So this is good. So now we just need to remove this switch right here. Turn this off. Yeah, that's a pretty long screw. And that one's shorter. That's funny. All right, anyway. Okay, so let's pull this switch out now. And let's make note here. So we've got some electrical tape that's covering up these side terminals, which is fine. That's something good. We'll need to put that back in place. But for now, let's go ahead and undo this tape here. So you can see here, there's two black wires going into the switch and a ground wire on the other side. So all we have to do is to disconnect these and put the wires back in the new switch. Now you can see this was installed through these push tabs in the back here. A lot of people say that that's not the best way to do it. A lot of people, the recommendation is to actually use these screws, the side terminals, to install the wires in. So we're gonna go ahead and when we install the new one, we're not gonna use these push tabs in the back. We're gonna go ahead and put them around the terminals on the new switch. And if you wanna take a look here, this is what the new switch looks like. So it's got these push tabs as well, where you can just push the wires into them. But we're gonna go ahead and use the screw terminals for that to make sure it's a really good solid connection. All right, now in order to get these wires to release, we need to push in a small blade in here, which will actually release the spring, and then we can pull the wire out. I'm just using a little screwdriver to do that. And if you can see here on this one, it's got some tabs right here. So you just have to push this down, and then that will release the spring that holds the wire in place. So. I'm gonna try a little bit wider blade screwdriver here, and it looks like that did the trick. Possibly. All right, and the second one was a lot easier. But you can see here, even on this one that I tried to release, it's actually, I just broke the copper off. So even though it says you're supposed to be able to push into these little slots to get the wires to release, doing that's really hard, and in this case, it didn't work at all. All right, so now with this new switch, what we need to do is we need to get this wire to a point to where it can actually wrap around this screw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip a little bit more of this insulation off so I can make a hook and have it hook around this screw, and then we can tighten it down. I'll do that for both of these wires, and we'll hook the ground back up, and then we'll get some electrical tape, and this should be finished. So first I'm going to get this wire stripper, strip off a little bit more wire here. The same for both sides. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some needle nose pliers, and I'm just going to make a hook. I'm just going to grab the end with the needle nose pliers, and then I'm just going to twist it to where it makes a hook like that. Do that for both of these. Okay, then I'm going to hook this around here. You can see that there. I just hook this around this switch. Actually, I think it needs to go the other way because you see this little hook here is supposed to keep it in place. So I'm going to flip these hooks around just a little bit, so that way it locks them in place. Okay, so let's get the first one on here. So there's the first one, and then I just need to tighten it down. Okay, and then here's this one. Do the same thing for this. And I know I flipped the hooks around, or the loops around on this switch, but I don't know that it's necessarily needed because it didn't really do much of anything. Okay, so that's tight. You can see that the copper wire is up against this plate, and it's smashed between the screw here on both of these. So now what we'll do is we'll get some electrical tape and wrap it around this, and then we'll go ahead and connect our ground wire before we do that. So all we're doing here is there's a green screw on this side. We're hooking this ground wire around that screw, and then we're tightening that down. Okay, really straightforward. And since this is a switch and it's just a normal two-way switch, not a three-way switch, we don't have to worry about what wire goes to what terminal. It's either one can go to either screw. Okay, so now we'll tape this up here. I'm going to go underneath. Make sure you don't tape over these screws that hold this outlet in place. So I'm just going to put some tape here, run it around. Okay. Finish that there. All right, so this is all taped up. You can see there's electrical tape covering these terminals. There's no bare wire exposed, so that's good. Not having any tape over this ground wire is fine. It's just those other terminals that we want to protect. And it looks like I did a better job than the original builder, so that's good. It's always nice. The other thing you want to make sure is when you put this back in place that if there's off and on words on the switch, that it makes sense, like off is up here, on is here, and it's not upside down. If it's upside down, you'll want to twist it and get it back in the right position. So now you've got that here, and we just need to do a couple things now. Okay, so this is a new switch. So these screws are not the screws that it came with when we uninstalled it. Normally that's not an issue, but because this is installed in a kitchen and because there's tile here, the screws need to be a little bit longer than the ones that come with the switches typically. So we need to remove these screws on this switch and use the ones that we had previously removed. So I'm going to do that now. And a lot of times these are just held on with a plastic washer, like in this case here. Just unscrewing it. Sometimes you can pull them through without unscrewing it, but I'm not doing that. So you can see there's a little plastic washer here that was holding this screw in. So we got one off, just need to do the second one. And put this here. We'll get our screw here, run it through. We'll start the top one so that way it kind of holds the switch in place. And then we'll do the same for the bottom one. The longest screw in the world. Just start it. And then we'll tighten this down. And then before you tighten it down all the way, you'll want to make sure you put the cover in place, because if it's not completely lined out or lined up to the slots on the cover, then you're not going to be able to get the cover on. So we need a little bit of play, a little bit of wiggle room. The other thing to note here too is the covers and the switches that were in this kitchen originally were in like an almond color, so a little bit of an off-white color. The switch that I'm putting in place is just white, so it's going to look a little bit odd, but I didn't have an almond switch handy to do this with, so we're probably going to update this later and make it the right color, but at least for now we'll be able to use the light. All right, so here's the other switch here that we didn't do anything with. I'm just going to tighten it down a little bit, still leave it a little bit of room for us to be able to make some adjustments, but it was a little bit too loose the way it was. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we can pop this cover back on, and you can see the white versus the almond. You can probably see that in the video. Okay, and when you put these back on, you don't want to tighten them down too much. You just want to get them snug, just barely to where they don't move anymore, because you don't want to strip them out. Okay, that's it. All right, we'll go flip the power back on and we'll test this to make sure everything's working. Okay, the power's back on, so let's try this and make sure it works. Ta-da! It works. Awesome. All right, so that's really all there is to replacing a switch that doesn't work anymore. A couple things to keep in mind. One, this was just a simple two-way switch, meaning there's just one switch to control the light, turning it on and off. If you have to replace a three-way switch, which is basically, you'll see these in like stairwells, for example, where you've got one switch at the bottom of the stairs and another switch at the top of the stairs, and you can use either one to turn the light on and off. Those are a little bit more complicated because there's an extra wire that's involved with that. But if you're just replacing a simple two-way switch, that's all there is to it, really. Okay, so hopefully you found this helpful. If you did, please hit that like button and subscribe to the Top Homeowner channel, where our goal is to help you become the best homeowner that you can be. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.